Imagine waking up at 8 in the morning to go to work, but outside it is pitch black. The sun won't rise for another 2 hours. This isn't a phenomenon of the Arctic Circle. This is daily life for millions of people in Western China. According to geography, the city of Kashgar should be 5 hours ahead of London, but according to the clock on the wall, it is 8 hours ahead. You probably think time zones are a natural geographic division of the Earth. 24 neat slices, each 15 degrees wide, perfectly tracking the sun as it moves across the sky. But they aren't. The map of global time zones is not a map of geography. It is a map of political decrees, colonial administration, wartime alliances, and nationalist ideology. The time on your phone right now is the downstream artifact of railway engineers, dictators, and diplomats carving up the clock for their own purposes. The accepted story is that the world came together in 1884 to standardize time for the benefit of global navigation and trade. And officially, that is what happened. But the historical record shows that almost immediately after the ink dried on the treaties, governments realized that controlling time was a mechanism of controlling people. If time zones were purely geographic, the lines would run straight from the North Pole to the South Pole. Instead, they zigzag violently. They bend around borders, they swallow entire subcontinents, and in some cases, they jump forward by 30 or 45 minutes just to make a point. Time is not a scientific constant. It is a highly contested political boundary. And the first person to realize this wasn't a politician at all. It was a man who missed a train. In 1876, a Scottish-Canadian railway engineer named Sandford Fleming was traveling through Ireland. He missed his train because the timetable printed a PM instead of an AM at the time. North America alone had over 70 different local times. Every city set its clock by the sun. When it was noon in Washington, it was 12:12 in New York and 11:43 in Chicago. For a railway engineer trying to build a transcontinental network, this was a nightmare. Fleming proposed a radical idea: divide the world into 24 standard time zones, labeled a through Y. All clocks within a zone would show the exact same time. He pushed this idea relentlessly, culminating in the International Meridian Conference in Washington, D.C. in October 1884. 26 nations attended. They voted to make Greenwich, England, the prime meridian of the world. But even at the very genesis of standard time, nationalism intervened. The French delegation refused to accept a British meridian. They abstained from the vote. For the next 27 years, France refused to use Greenwich Mean Time. When they finally adopted it in 1911, they refused to call it by its name, officially referring to it in legislation as Paris Mean Time, retarded by 9 minutes and 21 seconds. But France's stubbornness was just a preview. The real weaponization of time began in the mid-20th century. Between 1912 and 1949, China operated on 5 distinct time zones, accurately reflecting its massive geographic spread. But in 1949, Chairman Mao Zedong established the People's Republic of China. For Mao, 5 time zones represented a fractured, divided nation. He issued a decree abolishing them all. From the eastern coast to the western mountains, the entire country would operate on a single time, Beijing Standard Time. It was a mandate of national unity enforced through the clock. The geographic reality was ignored. Today, the border between China and Afghanistan marks the greatest terrestrial time zone cliff on Earth. If you step across that border, you must change your watch by 3.5 hours. In Kashgar, in China's far west, the government clock says 8 a.m. The sun says it is 4:30 in the morning. While Mao used time to force internal unity, others used it to signal external allegiance. Look at a map of Europe. The prime meridian, 0 degrees longitude, passes directly through the United Kingdom, France, and Spain. Geographically, all three should share the same time, and originally they did. But in 1940, Spanish dictator Francisco Franco issued an order. He moved Spain's clocks forward by 1 hour. He didn't do this for daylight savings or agricultural efficiency. He did it to align Spain's time with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. It was a temporal show of solidarity with Adolf Hitler. After the Second World War ended, the fascist regimes fell. But Spain never changed its clocks back. To this day, Spain remains in the wrong time zone. This is why Spanish primetime television doesn't start until 10:30 at night, and why Spaniards eat dinner later than anyone else in Europe. It isn't a Mediterranean cultural quirk. It is the lingering ghost of a 1940 fascist alliance. Sometimes, time zones are bent not by dictators, but by the sheer pragmatism of empire. India is one of the few major countries to operate on a half-hour offset, UTC plus 5.5 hours. Why the half hour? During the British Raj, the colonial administration needed a standard time for the Indian railway network. They chose the meridian passing through Allahabad, which mathematically resulted in a 5.5-hour difference from London. But there was a highly practical, imperial reason for this specific offset. British administrators realized that with exactly 5.5 hours of difference, they didn't need to do any mental math to know the time back home. They simply took their pocket watch, turned it upside down, and the hands perfectly displayed the time in London. When India gained independence in 1947, it kept the colonial time zone, a system designed for the convenience of British pocket watches, remains the temporal reality for 1.4 billion people today. The manipulation of time hasn't stopped. In August 2015, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un created Pyongyang time, moving the country's clocks back 30 minutes to break away from the time zone imposed by Japanese imperialists a century earlier. He changed it back 3 years later during diplomatic talks. Time is still a bargaining chip. Every time you schedule an international call, Every time you wonder why a country's schedule seems slightly off, you are navigating a landscape of invisible political borders. The time on your screen is not a reflection of the sun's position in the sky. It is a record of who won the war, who held the territory, and who had the power to dictate the rhythm of the day. Think about what this means in practice. There are roughly 45 million people living in Western China. Every single one of them lives in a state of permanent temporal dislocation. Their bodies operate on solar time. Their government operates on Beijing time. The gap between those two realities is not a minor inconvenience. It affects sleep patterns, school schedules, agricultural cycles, and economic productivity. A 2019 study found that regions in China further from Beijing's longitude had measurably worse health outcomes and lower economic output, directly attributable to the mismatch between biological time and political time. In Spain, the misaligned time zone has been linked to chronic sleep deprivation. The average Spaniard sleeps 53 minutes less per night than the European average. Researchers have calculated that realigning Spain to its correct geographic time zone would increase GDP by 2%. 2% of a national economy lost because a dictator wanted to impress Hitler. And in India, the half-hour offset means that every international business call, every flight booking, every global coordination task requires a calculation that no other major economy has to make. The colonial pocket watch trick has a measurable cost, paid every single day by 1.4 billion people. The origin, October 1884, 22 nations voted to standardize the world's clocks, creating a system of neat, geographic slices. The mechanism, state power. The realization by governments that whoever controls the clock controls the populace, leading to decades of decrees, wartime orders, and colonial mandates that shattered the geographic map. And the behavior still alive today, from the dark mornings in Kashgar to the late dinners in Madrid, to the half-hour calculations required to call New Delhi, to the 3 years North Korea spent in its own private time zone as an act of defiance. The past isn't dead, it's just hiding in your habits.